At dawn, the river ran red, not with rain, not with mud, with blood. Rome woke to the screams of mothers, the clash of steel, and the echo of boots pounding stone streets. Birds fled the rooftops. Temple bells rang in panic. And in the shadows of the Colosseum's outer walls, bodies already lay stacked like broken statues. By sunset, thousands would be dead: senators, soldiers, slaves, children. In one single day, the Eternal City would become a graveyard. Historians would call it a riot. The Senate would call it a tragedy. The Emperor would call it necessary. But the people would remember it as one name only: Rome's deadliest day. The morning of fear, the sun rose over Rome, as it always did, golden light spilling over marble temples and red-tiled roofs. Vendors opened their stalls. Slaves carried water jars. Legionaries changed guard at the gates. Everything felt normal. But beneath the calm, the city was starving. Grain ships from Egypt were late. The warehouses were empty. Bread prices had tripled. Families were breaking stones to fill stomachs. Children cried themselves to sleep. And rumor moved faster than hunger. The emperor is hoarding grain. The Senate is lying. The rich are eating while we starve. By mid-morning, the forum was full. Thousands gathered, not to worship, not to trade, to demand. The spark it started with a shout. A thin man climbed the steps of the temple of Saturn, holding an empty bread basket. "My children haven't eaten in 3 days." Another voice followed, then another, then hundreds. The crowd swelled. Workers, veterans, widows, slaves, even former soldiers who had fought for Rome. They weren't criminals. They were desperate. Roman guards moved in formation, shields raised. The centurion gave one command: disperse. No one moved. A stone flew. No one knows who threw it, but it hit a soldier's helmet, and Rome exploded. The first blood steel left its sheath. The front line of soldiers pushed forward. People fell. Someone screamed. Then a sword came down. Blood hit the marble steps. The crowd panicked. People ran. People tripped. People were crushed. And the killing began. Not organized. Not controlled. Not clean. Chaos. Vendors were trampled. Children lost their mothers. Fires started in the market stalls. Smoke climbed into the sky. The riot spread like wildfire through the streets, from the forum to the suburb, from the temples to the slums, from the rich districts to the poorest alleys. Rome turned against itself. The city burns by noon. The city was unrecognizable. Shops burned. Houses collapsed. Statues were torn down. Senators' homes were attacked. The mob wasn't just hungry anymore. They were angry. They dragged officials into the streets. They beat tax collectors to death. They burned records of debt. The poor weren't looting for luxury. They were destroying symbols. Symbols of power. Symbols of control. Symbols of a system that had abandoned them. The emperor's palace sealed its gates. The Senate fled, and the streets belonged to the people. The emperor's order by mid-afternoon. Messengers reached the palace. The report was simple: Rome is lost. The emperor stood silent. Then he gave the order that would define history: release the legions. Not guards, not police. Legions. Battle-hardened soldiers who had crushed rebellions across the empire. They marched into the city in full formation, shields locked, spears forward, faces cold. This was not crowd control. This was war. Rome versus Rome, the people didn't stand a chance. Unarmed citizens against trained soldiers. The streets became killing fields. Alleys became traps. Anyone who ran was cut down. Anyone who resisted was executed. Anyone who stood still was trampled. Bodies piled at intersections. Blood-filled gutters. Fires burned unchecked. Mothers covered children with their bodies. Old men were cut down where they stood. Teenage boys died holding stones. The legions advanced block by block, street by street, house by house. Rome was conquering itself. Silence at sunset by evening. The screams stopped, not because people were safe, but because there was no one left to scream. Smoke covered the city like a funeral veil. The Forum was a field of corpses. The markets were ash. The streets were red. Thousands were dead. Not soldiers, not enemies, Romans. The survivors hid in homes, in ruins, in temples. No riots, no crowds, no voices, only silence. The lie of history the next day. The Senate made its announcement. A dangerous uprising was stopped. Order has been restored. Rome is safe. Statues were cleaned. Streets were washed. Records were rewritten. They didn't call it a massacre. They didn't call it slaughter. They called it peace. But the people knew the truth. This wasn't order. It was fear. This wasn't justice. It was power. Rome survived. It always did. The buildings were rebuilt. The markets reopened. The grain ships arrived. Life went on. But something invisible had died that day. Trust. Because after Rome's deadliest day, the people understood one truth. Rome wasn't protected by its walls. Rome wasn't ruled by its laws. Rome wasn't saved by its gods. Rome was ruled by force, and anyone who forgot that would become part of the streets, part of the ash, part of the silence, part of history. Like and subscribe for more epic story.